How is everybody doing? It is Friday. First Friday. If everybody's doing okay. The 3rd of November. Somebody's got a birthday coming up. I wonder who that is. I have to check my birthdays, right? No, I don't have to check. How can you forget the 3 most important people in the world to me? And it's First Friday, which means it's devotion to the Sacred Heart. The sun is behind some clouds, on and off. Here it goes behind one. Some, should start seeing some. Actually, the wind's coming from the east to the west. The cloud is just blowing over the sun. So they're breaking up. It's like broken, spotty clouds. It's about 10 degrees warmer today than it was yesterday. Hence, no jacket. There is still a breeze. Isn't that strange? Well, there's still tropical activity, but it's way down south of us. Hopefully, I think we went through this whole season without a system. Knock on paper. Let's go to talking about Phase 1, SFQC, 1977. That's when we started. I told you we started in November, went through December, we had a week off for Christmas, and came back right after New Year's. I think it was 1 week. It's like a day or two before Christmas is when we let out. We came back the day after New Year's. Amounted to about a week. And it was hard because you went from being hungry and tired all the time and constantly going through physical training to a week of being at home or with your family or whatever. And I have to say maybe about 6 or 8 people just didn't come back because they just didn't figure they should put themselves through that. It really does take a commitment when you do things like that. And one of the other things about Phase 1 is that it was 7 days a week. There were no weekends. I think there was a priest that would come out on Sundays. I just vaguely remember a priest setting up a mobile altar set, like out of a briefcase. One of the military chaplains was a priest, and he would say mass to maybe 20 people or so in the courtyard of Camp McCall. It was outdoors. I suppose the whole scenario of why we lived so frugally, slept on wooden beds, had no air conditioning, no heat, was that if you were to be deployed somewhere in a remote area, that's what you would have. You'd have to make do with what nature provided. That's why I thought I told you the patch, the Special Forces patch, was shaped like an arrowhead because of Indian ingenuity and being able to survive and live off the land. So it was 7 days a week. It wasn't like we had weekends off. And I can't remember how many weeks it was. It went until middle of January, maybe. And one of the final tests was what was called the airfield run. And it was a 3-mile run in 50 minutes with 70 or 80 pounds on your back. I can't remember what it was. We had to run around the airfield at Camp McCall. That's the airfield I told you where secret planes would be landing in the middle of the night. You'd hear these jet aircraft. And as it would turn out, back in '77, they were experimenting with the F-117 Nighthawk. The Dark Angel, or whatever it was called, the Nighthawk. We never could see it. You could hear it, but never see it. At night, when there was no moon out, you couldn't see it. It was just nothing there. It's literally invisible. So I think that with the F-22, they've devised a way to do it and keep the color gray, so that they could use it during the day and it would be literally invisible against the sky and on radar. That wasn't true in Serbia. I think one was shot down. I can't remember why it was shot down. It was shot down because it turned a certain way, or it opened its bomb bay doors or something. That's an interesting story. The pilot ended up living in a covert or something and had people searching for him that almost stepped on his hand. That's how close they came to finding him. And he was picked up, I guess, by the special ops guys. Guys still there? So you had to make the airfield run. Sometimes I say it was 5 miles in 50 minutes, but that's just almost impossible. It might have been more than 3 miles. It might have been 4 miles in 50 minutes. And it's more like 3 miles. So there were 3 sides to the airfield, and they didn't weigh your rucksack before you went out. And because they didn't, some guys started to cheat. I told you before that you would put sandbags in your rucksack to make it weigh heavy enough. And they would have sandbags when we would meet up, and you would put one on your rucksack or in your rucksack. And I remember on the airfield run, running around, some guys were having a hard time because it was pass or fail. And I passed 1 or 2 guys who were letting sand out of their sandbags to make their load lighter. They didn't think they were going to weigh them because they didn't weigh them at the beginning. Well, lo and behold, they weighed them. They weighed them at the end. And I guess that's why they weighed them at the end, was because they knew people, if they weighed them at the beginning, people would cheat. So those guys flunked out. And it was, I actually went off the course a little way, so I ran more than the 3 or 4 miles, whatever it was, and still came back and was in like the first 10 people to cross the finish line. I was just so physically fit back then, so mentally and physically focused. There was no graduation from phase 1. You were told that you made it, and you came back from the final field operation, which was 4 days of patrolling, a 4-day patrol in the winter time. And what I remember about that is my patrol was a reconnaissance. And there were people that they had paid from other units to come out. And it's actually raining right now. It's a sun shower. Isn't that crazy? It's a good thing my camera's water resistant. Not with the media mod on it though. Isn't that interesting? There's just a very few drops of rain just came down. I think God is crying. Is God crying? There was a few drops of rain. In the Passion of the Christ, I think that's what that symbolizes. It's when Jesus looked up, and at the very instant he died, the skies were open. These huge drops of rain fell as if God were crying. So I wrote up my patrol order. It's like 15 pages. And that's what got me graded and passed, because I knew my stuff. I paid attention and I learned. I learned from the Vietnam veterans. I learned from the instructors, and I took everything, absorbed it all. At 18, it went into January, I turned 19. No birthday celebration that year. And we moved on to phase 2. So for my MOS, phase 2 was small and heavy weapons. Lots and lots of weapons. Heavy and light. Probably one of the most challenging parts of the training was mortar fire control, or what's it called? Stink bug. Stink bug. No, get down. There's no dog mess around here, so the bug's got no place to go. You know how when you see dog crap on the ground, bugs will be crawling in it? It was fire control for indirect fire. Back then they didn't use computers. We used a big wheel where you would post where the guy was that was watching, because you'd have to adjust the rounds from where the guy was, not from where you were. So he would say left 20 and minus 50. So you would turn the wheel to his perspective and do left 20 minus 50, and then turn it back to your perspective, and then do the math and change the sights on the guns. So all the guns would be changed every time he'd make an adjustment. So that required a lot of math, and I think I've got some of those numbers in my filing cabinet still written down from somewhere. And not only was I required to do it, but I was required to be a trainer, somebody who could train other people to do it, because I was the weapons expert on my team. Light and heavy weapons. Anybody had a problem with their gun, or we came across some enemy weapons, I would know how to use them. And I would train everybody else on my team in the country we were being deployed to, and the weapons and things we could be expected to come in contact with. So just like the medics would teach us the things that we needed to know in case the medic got hurt. So the medic was teaching us how to do IVs, administer painkillers, things like that. So phase 2 was weapons. I think that was 6 or 8 weeks again. This was the Bible. It's the small arms of the world. You can see all the guns I've marked in here. This is from 1978. These little index cards. And this used to have a paper cover on it. Wow, it's really dripping down rain. So all these weapons that you see that are marked with paper were ones that I had to know inside and out. They were the weapons that would be used on the final exam in weapons school, where they would take like a mixture of 10 firearms, pistols and rifles, foreign and domestic, and they would take them apart all the way down to the springs and the drift pins, tiny little springs. Every part that could be taken apart was taken apart and put on a big table, and the parts were all mixed up. Then you had 10 minutes to assemble 10 properly functioning firearms, and they had to pass a function test. So that was challenging, but you got to where you could do this almost blindfolded. But those were the guns, all of these that are listed in here. And I think I've mentioned this before, what my favorite of all time was. You got it, the Belgian FN. Is this what it looked like back then? The Belgian FN. You know, even back then it came with a composite stock. And it was 7.62 NATO, so 308 Winchester. Very powerful. Lightweight alternative to the BAR, Browning Auto Rifle, which is 30-06. Those were heavy. This one carried heavier rounds, but had a long, accurate barrel and was so much lighter because it was made out of like a green plastic composite. So this book is in my bookcase, by the way. There's the Belgian Mag 58 machine gun. Now, you wouldn't know what that is, but the Belgian submachine guns, the FN 9mm, the Uzi submachine gun, in case you don't know, was made by FN Corporation. Was a Belgian, not Israeli Uzi. Right, here it is. That's the Belgian machine gun and the Belgian FN Uzi. This was my Bible for weapons school, and I think Uncle Johnny has the same book, I'm not sure. But this was by far the funnest, most enjoyable course that I went to. It was demanding. We still did physical training in the morning, and we had to maintain physical conditioning, and we had to be proficient not only in taking these apart, putting them back together, but in shooting them. So we would go out to the range constantly. We would be shooting all these different firearms, and it was a lot of fun. Of course, with firing them, you have to clean them. There's the finished 550 UMI finished Suomi submachine gun, 9mm parabellum. You know, there were 9 things you had to describe of every weapon, and this is what they would have you write down: the caliber, system of operation, the length, barrel length, weight, the feed device, the sights, the cyclic rate, and the muzzle velocity. So you had to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You had to know these 9 things of all these weapons that are in here. Because another aspect of the final exam is the instructor had 2 big boxes. This is the final exam for weapons school. One in the front and one in the back. This is how they weed out people that are non-performers. Is he would take he would walk down the middle, and we had tables set up, on both sides, and he would take a firearm out of the back box and walk to the front of the room with it over his head. It was maybe about 35-40 feet to the front of the room, and then he would put it in the box in the front of the room. And by the time he got back to the next firearm, you had to write down those 9 things about what he just had in his hand. I think one of the other things was the country of origin. Caliber, country of origin, the method of operation, which was blowback or locking bolt, things like that. Weight, feed device, cyclic rate, and muzzle velocity. So yeah, the Model 31 Suomi 9mm had a 1300 feet per second muzzle velocity. Let's go back to the Finnish FN. 7.62 NATO, which is 308 Winchester, weighed 9 pounds, 40 inches, barrel was 21. It was gas operated, like M16, selective fire. Feeding was from detachable box magazine, staggered 20 count capacity. And front hooded sights, that was the circular sight in the back on the newer model. Fixed sight in the front. Graduated 650 to 700 rounds per minute. Most of the weapons in service throughout the world are only used as semi-automatic. In other words, you would heat this up considerably if you fired 700 rounds a minute. You would distort the barrel. Yeah, the paratrooper model of the FN had a collapsible stock. Then there was a heavy barrel version, FN 7.62 FAL it was called. In Israel and Peru, among other countries, a squad automatic weapon. And another modified version was made by Australia and Canada. So just very interesting things that I was required to know about all this. And so I knew these guns, all these guns that have got little tags on them. This book is 30, 50. Surprised, it looks like it got wet at one time. The paper cover got torn off. It was Small Arms of the World. They had it in the bookstore on post. I think it was $40 or something like that. You see what year this was printed. A basic manual of small arms, but they told us we had to get this if we were serious about passing. And then they gave us a list of the guns. Copyright 1977. Isn't that interesting? So I bought this right after it was printed. And at the very beginning they gave us the list. And then I made the cards up and put them in the book. And then plus I had another set of cards that had on the back the 9 things or 7 things that you were required to check. Model 23. It's submachine gun. Yeah, I would write on the back of the card the 9 things that I was supposed to know. And that was the final exam. And of course we got to shoot them all, which is fun. And it took a long time to learn all this, because you had to take a day and maybe learn two weapons a day, because you had to tear them down to even the smallest little pin or screw that was in there, and put them back together and make sure they function. And after we would shoot them, we'd come in and we'd take them apart and clean them, and they'd take them back to the depot. You know, they had a weapons depot there that looked like a Sam's Club. And inside on the racks, instead of generators, you know, and baby diapers, they were firearms stacked to the ceiling. You would go against one back wall and they would have racks and racks of different types of guns packed like 40, 50 feet in the air. You'd have to bring a special selector, and you would have to have a list of the weapons you wanted to sign out. And then you'd go through there with your selector. They'd give you a big metal box loaded on like a forklift device that you can go up and down in, like a selector at Publix. And you would go up and down the aisles pulling the guns that you wanted to sign out. And then at the checkout, they would write down the serial numbers and you were responsible for those. And that was when I conducted firearms training with my team. Is the sergeant would say, team sergeant would say, let's do Czechoslovakian submachine guns, and I'd go up in there and I'd probably check out not just submachine guns, but other type of Soviet-era weapons that were native to Czechoslovakia that we would be expected to encounter, so that we all were familiar with them. My job was to make sure everybody else on my team knew what we were getting into when we went into an area, type of weapons and things. That's all I'm going to talk about today. This is in my bookcase. So 77, 30, almost 50 years old. In 3 years this will be 50. But it would have been about this time back in 1977, November 4th, I was getting ready to graduate airborne school. I think on my diploma it says the 8th, I think. Or maybe I'm thinking of the orders that I got. So mentally challenging. I'm sure there's probably smarter soldiers out there and more physically fit soldiers out there, but there's never a combination of the two that's any better than our American Special Forces guys. Both physically and mentally sharp as a razor, and focused on the mission and getting done what needs to be done. Brave men, for sure. Uncle Johnny was one too, you know. I love you guys. Please take care this day. And it's interesting, we had just a little bit of rain. Now it's blue skies over here, and that gray cloud's over here now. Looks like it's moving this way. It is. It's moving like northeast to southwest. I love you guys. I already said that. I'll say it again. Please take care of yourselves and your critters, your animals, your house pets, and each other. And remember that I love you, that God loves you. Together and forever we always will. And may God allow us to be reasonably happy in this life, supremely happy forever in the next. Is it springtime? I heard a bird. Bye, you guys. I love you.